The crowd at Harbour Town was electric. Thousands of fans, all on their feet, all screaming the same three letters. USA, USA. The world number one, Scottie Scheffler, had just pulled off one of the most incredible comebacks of his career. He was trailing by 3 shots, with just 4 holes to play. He birdied the 15th, he birdied the 16th, he stared down Matt Fitzpatrick on the 18th green and forced a playoff. The American hero was one swing away from victory. Then came the moment that nobody could believe. On the playoff hole, Fitzpatrick hit first. From 204 yards, with the wind howling, he struck a 4-iron that tracked toward the flag like a laser and stopped just 13 feet from the cup. It was the shot of the tournament. But Scheffler had an advantage. He was 18 yards ahead of Fitzpatrick off the tee. He had 186 yards to the pin, a straightforward 6-iron. The crowd held its breath. Scheffler swung, and the ball went nowhere. It ballooned into the wind, fell out of the sky, and landed 37 yards short of the green. 37 yards. CBS commentator Jim Nantz could not believe what he was seeing. "Way, way, way back," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. Scheffler could only shake his head. He recovered with a pitch to 8 feet, but it did not matter. Fitzpatrick rolled in his birdie putt. The $3.6 million prize was gone, and Scottie Scheffler was left to explain what had just happened. This is Golfio, and this is the truth about the RBC heritage moment that left everyone stunned. For more coverage in golf, subscribe and hit the notification bell. To understand why Scottie Scheffler found himself under fire after the RBC heritage, you have to start at the beginning of the final round. Matt Fitzpatrick began Sunday with a 3-shot lead over the world number one. It was the largest 54-4 4-hole lead at the RBC heritage since Stuart Sink carried a 5-stroke lead to victory in 2021. The Englishman was playing the tournament he had wanted to win since he was a child. He had already won it once before, in 2023, beating Jordan Spieth in a playoff. And now he was 18 holes away from doing it again. But Scottie Scheffler is not Jordan Spieth, and he is not the kind of player who gives up. The 29-year-old from Dallas had just finished runner-up to Rory McIlroy at the Masters the week before. He had gone from 12 shots back to within 1 stroke of victory at Augusta. He knew how to chase. He knew how to make birdies when it mattered most. And on Sunday at Harbour Town, he did exactly that. Scheffler shot a bogey-free 67 in the final round. He made 8 birdies on Saturday to get himself back into contention. And when he stepped onto the 15th tee, trailing Fitzpatrick by 3 shots, he turned on the jets. Birdie at 15. Birdie at 16. The lead was down to 1. The crowd, which had been politely supportive all day, began to sense something special. They started to get loud. They started to believe that their American hero could pull off the impossible. They started to chant, "USA, USA." The noise was deafening. Fitzpatrick, to his credit, did not crumble. He had been in this position before. He knew that 3-shot leads can evaporate quickly against Scheffler. He had said as much the day before. "I know it won't be easy to hold off Scottie," he admitted, but he also knew something else. He knew that if he could just hold on, if he could just stay patient, he might have a chance. Then came the 18th hole in regulation. Fitzpatrick's drive found the fairway. His approach shot missed the green, landing in the sand to the right. He faced a delicate chip shot, the kind that can make or break a championship. He hurried his swing. The ball came up well short of the hole, leaving him a 20-foot putt just to save par. The crowd, sensing blood, screamed even louder. Fitzpatrick stepped up to the putt. He took a deep breath. He pulled the putter back, and he missed. The ball slid past the hole on the low side. Scottie Scheffler, who had already made his par, raised his eyebrows at his caddy. The playoff was on. For the second time in his career, Matt Fitzpatrick would need an extra hole to win the RBC heritage. And for Scottie Scheffler, the chance to steal victory was right in front of him. The playoff format at Harbour Town is simple. Sudden death on the 18th hole. 1 hole, 1 chance. Win or go home. And the crowd knew exactly what to do. As Fitzpatrick and Scheffler walked back to the 18th tee, the chants started again. Louder this time. More intense. USA, USA. Hundreds of voices, all screaming for the Englishman to fail. Fitzpatrick had faced hostile crowds before. Just 1 month earlier, at the Valspar Championship, he had beaten Cameron Young in front of a pro-American crowd. He had even put his finger to his ear after that victory, silencing the fans who had cheered against him. But this was different. This was the world number one. This was a player who had dominated golf for 3 years. This was the biggest stage of the season so far. And the crowd was not just cheering for Scheffler. They were actively against Fitzpatrick. They wanted him to lose, and Fitzpatrick heard every single word. He would later say that he loved it, that the noise spurred him on, that there is no better feeling than winning away from home against a hostile crowd. But in the moment, standing on that tee, he had to block it all out. He had to focus on the shot. Scheffler hit first. His drive found the fairway, and it was a good one. He was 18 yards ahead of Fitzpatrick. The advantage was his. Then it was Fitzpatrick's turn. He stood over the ball, took a deep breath, and swung. The ball soared into the air, cutting through, the wind tracking toward the flag. It was a 4-iron from 204 yards, one of the most difficult shots in golf, especially under pressure. And he hit it perfectly. The ball landed just a few yards in front of the cup, took one bounce, and stopped 13 feet past the hole. The crowd, which had been screaming moments earlier, went quiet. They knew. They knew that Fitzpatrick had just hit the shot of the tournament. Now it was Scheffler's turn to answer. From 186 yards, he pulled out his 6-iron. The wind was blowing right to left. The crowd was screaming. The pressure was at its absolute peak. And then it happened. The swing that would define the tournament. The swing that would leave fans stunned and commentators speechless. The swing that would cost Scottie Scheffler $3.6 million. Scottie Scheffler's 6-iron approach shot on the playoff hole was not just bad. It was shocking. The ball ballooned into the air as soon as it left the club face. The wind, which had been a factor all day, caught it and pushed it off course. The ball fell out of the sky and landed 37 yards short of the green. 37 yards. For context, that is the length of a full wedge shot for most professionals. Scheffler had hit a 6-iron that traveled less distance than some of his practice swings. The reaction from the CBS broadcast booth was immediate and unforgettable. Jim Nantz, the voice of golf for decades, could not believe what he was seeing. Way back, he said, his voice filled with disbelief. It was the kind of call that gets replayed for years, the kind of moment that defines a tournament, the kind of mistake that leaves fans asking one question: how did the best player in the world hit a shot that bad with $3.6 million on the line? Scheffler himself seemed just as confused as everyone else. His body language said it all. He stood on the fairway, watching his ball land 37 yards short, and his shoulders slumped. He knew. He knew that Fitzpatrick had just hit a perfect shot. He knew that he had just hit one of the worst shots of his career. And he knew that the tournament was probably over. But Scheffler is not the kind of player who gives up. He walked to his ball, surveyed the situation, and hit a beautiful pitch shot to 8 feet. It was a recovery that most players could not have made. It gave him a chance. A slim chance, but a chance nonetheless. The crowd, which had been stunned into silence, started chanting again. USA. USA. Maybe, just maybe, Scheffler could still win. Maybe Fitzpatrick would miss his 13-foot birdie putt. Maybe the tournament would go to a second playoff hole. But Fitzpatrick had other plans. He stood over his putt, took a deep breath, and rolled it toward the hole. The ball tracked perfectly. It never deviated from its line. And when it dropped into the cup, the tournament was over. Matt Fitzpatrick had won the RBC Heritage for the second time. And Scottie Scheffler was left standing on the green, shaking his head in disbelief. The aftermath of the RBC Heritage playoff was almost as dramatic as the playoff itself. Social media exploded within minutes of Fitzpatrick's winning putt dropping. Fans and analysts alike were trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. How had the world number one hit such a terrible shot at the worst possible moment? The criticism was harsh. The New York Post called it one of his worst shots, with $3.6 million on the line. The Mirror described it as a brutal mistake that, left gymnants in disbelief. Fans piled on. Some called it a choke. Others said it proved that Scheffler was not as clutch as everyone thought. A few defended him, pointing out that even the best players in the world hit bad shots sometimes. But the numbers were damning. Scheffler had now finished runner-up in back-to-back weeks. At the Masters, he came from 12 shots back to within one stroke of Rory McIlroy. At the RBC Heritage, he came from 3 shots back to force a playoff, only to lose on the first extra hole. The prize money difference was staggering. First place at the Masters paid $4.5 million. First place at the RBC Heritage paid $3.6 million. Scheffler earned $2.7 million as runner-up at Augusta and $16 million at Harbour Town. In total, he missed out on an extra $3.5 million in just 7 days. That is the kind of math that keeps players up at night. But Scheffler, to his credit, did not make excuses. In his post-round interview, he was gracious and honest about what had happened. In both weeks, I put myself behind the 8-ball going into the weekend and had really nice Saturdays and Sundays in order to get myself into contention, he said. On Sunday, it's a shot here or there that makes a difference. This was one of those weeks where anytime Fitzy needed something to happen, he made something happen. He definitely earned the win, and he just played great golf. It was a classy response from a player who had every right to be frustrated. But the question remained. What had gone wrong on that 6-iron? Was it the wind? Was it nerves? Was it simply a bad swing at the worst possible moment? Scheffler did not say. And perhaps he did not know himself. Golf is a game of inches and milliseconds. Sometimes, even the best players in the world hit shots that they cannot explain. This was one of those times. So where does Scottie Scheffler go from here? And what does this loss mean for his season? Let me break down 3 possible answers. First, the short-term perspective. Scheffler is still the world number 1. He is still the most dominant player in golf. 2 runner-up finishes in back-to-back weeks are not a disaster. They are proof that he is consistently competing at the highest level. The difference between winning and losing in golf is often just 1 shot. At the Masters, it was 1 shot. At the RBC Heritage, it was 1 shot. Scheffler is knocking on the door. It is only a matter of time before he breaks through again. Second, the long-term perspective. These back-to-back runner-up finishes could be a turning point. They could be the motivation that drives Scheffler to an even higher level. Or they could be the beginning of a pattern. The kind of pattern that haunts players for years. The kind of pattern that makes fans question whether a player has what it takes to win the biggest events. Scheffler has already proven that he has what it takes. He has won 2 Masters titles. He has been the world number 1 for years. But the narrative around him is shifting. Before these 2 weeks, he was seen as unbeatable. Now, he is seen as beatable. That is a dangerous shift for any athlete. Third, the perspective on his rivals. Matt Fitzpatrick's victory at the RBC Heritage was not just a win, it was a statement. The Englishman has now won twice in the last month. He has moved to number 3 in the world rankings, and he has proven that he can go toe-to-toe with Scheffler and come out on top. The second-tier stars that the PGA Tour has been talking about are no longer second-tier. They are legitimate threats to win any tournament they enter. My final take is this. Scottie Scheffler did not choke at the RBC Heritage. He simply got beat by a better shot on the day. Matt Fitzpatrick's 4-iron from 204 yards was one of the best shots of the year. It would have beaten anyone. The fact that Scheffler mishit his 6-iron does not change that. But it does raise questions. Questions about whether the pressure of being world number 1 is starting to weigh on him. Questions about whether he can close out tournaments when it matters most. Questions that only he can answer. The next major championship is just weeks away, and the golf world will be watching to see how Scottie Scheffler responds. This is Golfio. If you made it to the end of this video, you care about the real stories behind the game. Subscribe to this channel for more deep dives into the moments that matter. And leave a comment below. Was Scheffler's playoff mishap a choke or just bad luck? I will see you in the next video. For more coverage in golf, subscribe and hit the notification bell.